Hello everybody! Welcome all to GameGuru live broadcast number 19. My supposedly 15-minute tirade through the latest progress of the GameGuru MAX development. And I've got a couple of things to show you today. A little bit of graphics, but also the update on the latest build, so I can show you through that and what has changed. But before any of that, obviously everyone's waiting for the question and they've already answered it, so I don't need to ask the question that's already been answered, which is, can you hear me? And the answer is a resounding oh yes. So I'm jumped straight into it with the first little piece, which of course is some nice graphics. Now I just preloaded these into the art package. As you may know, the seller demo is going to be one of our showcase demos demonstrating the shooter style of gameplay. And the request from my recently newly appointed level designer says, I want more assets. And so I passed that request on to my artist, and my artist very kindly provided. So we've added some trash. So as you can see, we've added some trash into the scene. We've also got different kinds of trash, so it just muddies up the floor a little bit, make it a little bit lived in. Here are some crate varieties. So you've got different kinds of crates you can scatter around, and obviously crates with handles and open tops as well, just to show this is a place where you do lots of storage. And we also wanted to create some sort of barriers, some sort of ways, you meet a door, the door is locked, you go away, you find a key, come back, unlock the thing, and then you can carry on to the next piece of the level. And so it was requested we have some sort of fences and some doors in it. So we've got one that's painted and a wooden fence that's not been painted, and of course you can have it closed. But I can also reveal that there has been some experimenting going on with getting the doors to open and close with physics rather than through animations. I think that's pretty exciting. And if you think about VR games, you kind of want that. You want to be able to walk right up to a door, push your hand forward and gently push that door open. So we are looking at that as well. We won't throw away the idea of an animated entity that opens and closes a door as per your specification, but the idea that you have the option of making the door a physics thing, I think is pretty cool. And of course some nice lighting, because we do have great lights now. We can drop as many lights as we want and set them range and attenuation. However, where's the light coming from? All we've really got is a hanging bulb and a strip light. So we've added a nice wall light into varieties, and so we can drop that one in around the cellar, so you actually understand where the light's coming from. So there's going to be some more assets as well. We're going to keep working on adding content to the cellar showcase until we've really got it, and it does feel like you're in a typical modern game running around fighting for your life against zombies. I forgot to mention, if you've got any questions, please post them in the live chat. Just stick a question mark at the end, and towards the end of this broadcast I'll go through those live chat statements, find the questions and answer a few of them for you, and any ones I don't get to I'll answer them in a forum thread where you'll also find the recording of this live broadcast if you wasn't lucky enough to attend it live. Now, I also want to talk a little bit about grass, not too much because there's nothing to show you that's actually in code, but just to show you the progress of our own researches. So if I just go back here and drop onto this and press play, I should say this isn't mine. These are just research videos what we're picking out. But these are the kind of effects we're going to aim for. As you can see, this grass is quite violently moving. And also when the player is walking through, it's actually disturbing the grass and pushing it out the way. Those are the two techniques that we'll be focusing on. And of course trying to get some graphical fidelity that matches this. As you can see, the terrain floor texture and the grass match really well. So it's a very natural foliage effect. As you can see, these are bladed grasses. And if I just pause that and show you the next one. This is from No Man's Sky. But this grass is moving a little smoother, so the wind is much more gentle, be able to control the wind. And of course, similarly, as the character will push through higher grass, the grass moves out the way. As you can see, it's more of a jab rather than a soft spherical move out the way. So something between these two techniques is what we're probably settling on. Now it's just a case of implementing it in a way that's nice and performant. So those are the little bits of visuals I'd like to show, but what I really want to do is jump straight into Max. As you can see, I've chosen one of the future third-party DLCs as my backdrop because it is pretty cool. And I want to show you some UI stuff. because that's what we've been working on. We've almost gone back to the beginning and gone through every single stage of the UI to make sure that it's right. Obviously the welcome screen is going to be replaced, but the bits that we've focused on, as I say, I'm going right from the beginning. So we've cleaned up the file menu. You've normally got 3 things, and within there's only a few items. The biggest change, of course, is it's all gone out of the edit menu, and now it's in settings. So you can see our settings is coming along. There's still more changes. We did a UI review yesterday, and we've got some more changes to that. And of course, that's just an experimental tab that we'll get rid of in the final release. But as you can see, we've got a place now for all of our settings that we move away from, say, the frontline interfaces. You've got the sculpt, paint, and vegetation as 3 separate panels. So you can see this is the new layout of the sculpt, where not only you get all your tools here, but you also get a handy video that you can play. And of course, when you select step by step, then you can get even more help as an interactive step by step going through there. So all that's nice. And of course, this is a lot of work went into the paint terrain. As you can see, we've now got nice big terrains we can paint, but also you've actually got this idea of brush strength. And another cool thing is the idea of, we're not calling it ratio, we're going to call it texture scale. But the idea is, let's say, for example, you selected a wood, and it adds it to your note selection. So you paint that down, you see the resolution as you're looking at it from above. But if I change the scale of it to say 3:1, you see how it's a different size? So you can select your texture, but then you can decide how big that brush is going to be painted onto the floor. So that's the idea of that. And of course, we've improved this so there's not get a lot of little teeny weeny thumbnails and file names. You now get big selections, and of course it tells you the name of the texture underneath. And similarly, if you're not familiar with all these controls and how to do, you've also got a help video on that. And the last one, add vegetation. You've got the usual things. We're moving these settings at some point, but the idea is I can select multiple grass types. We're getting rid of the ticks. We're just going to have highlights, yellow highlights around these boxes. But we've also got, and this is pretty cool, height range. So we've got a minimum and a maximum all on the same gadget. This gadget's going to get a little bit of extra TLC as well. We're maybe going to put a little image in the back so it instantly highlights, oh, this is grass height, so there's small grass at this end and high grass at that end. The general idea, as you might imagine from, well, seen actually from previous videos, is you can paint some grass, or you can say, well, I want some high grass, so I'll choose this range, so that's higher. Or you can select a really low range, so we'd bring that right back down and there, and then you can sort of squash that grass like so. So as you can see, you've got your low grass and then you've got your high grass as well. So that's where we are on the interface. We're still going through. The next thing we're looking at are things like what happens in entity tools. So we're going to, as you see, we've already moved the snapping mode into entity tools. We've started making things a little bit easier, like it's add instead of just a little plus, and you've got a nice little search thing, so you can search for a particular entity, and then if you want, you can actually look back on any previous searches that you've done. And of course, you can get help on adding entities into your world as well. So we've actually done things in the order that you might encounter them when you first run the software, but we'll eventually drill down into this library panel, so we're going to completely transform that. That's going to be really cool. And then drilling down into things like the character creator, the importer, the structure editor, and also gameplay. The idea that you'll be able to do more visual editing of game logic within the editor without having to revert or resort to scripting. And of course, more icons are on the way to replace my horrible programmer art. So that's a little bit of preview where we are with the build. It's all going to be UI until we've gone through the entire software and we're all completely happy with it internally, and then we'll be able to share a version that we can say, right, now that's done, we can drill right into the gameplay and do lots of things in there, which I think is going to be as important as all this UI overhaul. The idea that the games you create have enough mechanical sort of logic that you can create more than just one type of game. We're basically going to focus on 3. We're going to focus on what you've already seen, which is a basic shooter style. We're also going to focus on the puzzle style games. So it's not really about shooting, it's about solving sort of problems, sort of cerebral sort of games. And then quest style games, role-playing games, things like that. So those 3 styles will need logic for. So we're going to populate that. So now I'm going to answer some questions. I'm just checking out the clock. You know, if I actually do this in the next 2.5 minutes, I can hit a 15-minute mark. Whether you let me to answer just 3 questions and then go away, I don't know. So let's see. Just going to scroll to the top, find my first question. So yes, thank you very much. Hello, 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 everyone. Easy Game Development Tools posts a question with, I think it was 15 question marks this time. Does Max use floor zones? 15 question marks. In my experience, they don't work well in Classic. 16 question marks. I don't think floor zones were a particularly good idea. They certainly solved a problem in Max where you could actually have sort of a raised surface and designate that surface as something that an AI character can walk on. But do you really want to be painting floor zones on every surface? I don't think so. I think it's pretty a nasty job, especially if you've got a massive large level like the size of a city. You don't really want to do that for every single room. So what if it was a system that auto-detected floor surfaces that are reasonably flat, reasonably big, that a character can intuitively walk on, and then just drop a character on it? Wouldn't that be better? So that's kind of where I'll be leaning towards. I'm not making any promises, still need to do the R&D on it, but I think that should be the way forward. So don't expect floor zones to appear in Max. I'll probably get rid of them at some point during the development process. So hopefully that's good news for everyone. T-Bone asks, is there a chance of a Classic hotfix? There is an update scheduled. We are doing one. It's called the Christmas Fixes, and we'll be going through the GitHub board. So if you do have a bug, or you have something that you really want in that Fixes update, make sure it is on the GitHub issues board and it's assigned as a bug. And make sure there's enough information that we can easily, quickly reproduce that bug. And then if we can reproduce it, we can fix it 5 times quicker. So yeah, if it's in there, we'll check it out and hopefully we can fix it and we can get it into the Christmas Fixes update, which happens next month. So here's another question. Will the Steam launch date defo remain 1st of December? 15 question marks. You can imagine who asked that question. There is an open release date now on GameGuru MAX. The 1st of December has been scrubbed, and now it's just going to be a date in the future. Don't know when that's going to be. So hopefully keep providing you with dev builds so you can check out versions as you need, and of course keeping up to date with these live broadcasts and of course on the forums as to what is going on. So that's the plan. There is no 1st of December anymore. Sorry about that. Next question. Or a suggestion, it looks like. Well, will there be a view option to hide things like lights and markers? Yeah, I think that's a pretty decent. As you see, we've got the tools at the top. What you can work on, like I'm working on entities or I'm working on paths, and of course you'll have panels for these things. As you see at the top, I've got waypoints panel, and then I've got an entity tools panel. So it could be there is an option where when you're working on that, you don't see the waypoints, but when you select waypoints, then you see the waypoints. So we're going to look for intuitive ways first, but of course anything that gets a little bit techy and advanced, we just use our settings, and we can maybe throw stuff in here, you know, auto display or something like that. So we will be providing those very clever and intuitive controls, but you probably won't see them until we've done all the larger chunks of the UI work. But it's definitely something we have been talking about, and I think it will make it into Max. Mr. Weatherstorm asks, you should definitely look at Red Dead 2 for grass effect inspiration. Red Dead 2, that's the Wild West game, isn't it? If Rick's listening, please check that out. Grab a piece of video which has grass in it, and then add it to our projects list, and I'll have a look at that this week. Thanks for the suggestion. Scrolly. Let's see if we can find some questions from different people. Okay, we've got a question from Atancio. Will there be a way to import the entire GG Classic Assets library into Max? No, there will be no one button where you can just grab them. I mean, you can certainly just manually copy the entire entity bank over, and those entities, for the most part, will still, you can see them, you can select them, you can drop them into your level, and they'll most likely work. So you could do it that way. A smarter way is to say, if you're just interested in a particular DLC, for example, just load in that DLC's level from Max with the level actually located in the Classic installation. And it will not only copy the level over, or at least load it into Max, but it will copy over all the assets that level needs automatically. That's one of the little gifts that Max will provide. So this is a very clean way of getting in just the entities that you want. You don't necessarily want every single asset from Classic into Max, because Max, you know, you want the graphics to look nice. So you're going to focus on the assets that, you know, look really good in the new rendering engine. So those are two ways you can get your assets over. Here's a question from D32 Productions. What will the native FPS be on GameGuru? Native FPS, I suppose you mean the speed. It is locked to the frame rate of your monitor. So if you're at 60 Hz, you'd be 60 FPS. If your monitor's 72 Hz, you would be 72 FPS. And if you're 144 Hz, you'll be 144. So it's whatever your refresh rate is. The reason for that is a technique called VSync. It's the idea that you don't get what's called screen tearing. If you ramped it so you go as fast as you possibly can, it's a very subtle artifact at high speeds, but at low speeds you see what's called tearing, where you can see half the frame of one frame and then the second half of the second frame after, and it's sort of like you're seeing two frames in one go, which looks very nasty. That's why we use VSync by default. Question, here's a good question. When will the next beta be out? Well, we're just finishing up some bits and pieces. I still haven't got the nod on when we should release another one. I'd like to release one quite soon, because I'm sure you want to start playing around with what I've been demonstrating over the last couple of weeks. So I just need an internal nod on that, and the justifications and reasons for giving you a build. If a lot of people on the forum say yes, we want to build, we don't care if you've not finished the UI yet, and then I can take that to the internal team and say, look, they want this build, and if I get approval, then you're going to get it. So yeah, go into the forums later when this recording gets put there and make your voices heard. Here's a question. Will multiplayer be on Steam or a dedicated server? And also, will you include mission objectives system? Not a lot of decisions have been made on the multiplayer. We've been focusing first on making sure that single player creation is great. There's no point in just half baking a little bit of this and a little bit of that just to tick all the boxes. So we're going all out to make the UI great, and then we're going to make the gameplay great and make sure it's fast and it looks brilliant. And then once we've got all that in place, then we'll start thinking and worrying about the multiplayer side of things. So no real details for you on that yet. Here's a question from the Sleeping Warrior. The 3 types of games you mentioned, will all of these mechanics be available for VR without any additional scripting? Yes, absolutely. If you make a game and then you put your headset on, you can play that game. Obviously, there are definite considerations where there are certain games that only work really well in VR, and then other games that only really work well in non-VR. And of course, you're going to discover that for yourself. But because this is basically an out-of-the-box solution, we're not going to let you worry about all those nuances. You make a game, drop a load of objects, select some logic, click the button here at the top, this one here, and then put your headset on and you can play that game. Of course, there's probably extra attributes you'll be able to set in order to choose exactly what the controller's doing and what options you're going to make available. Inevitably, you have to, because you're not using a mouse, you're using a controller. But yeah, the idea is all the logic will be functional both in VR and non-VR. I think that makes perfect sense to me. Here's a question. Will there be dedicated make human model import, or something to bypass the need to make animations manually? Make human, as I recall, the last version that I played with does not export animations. It exports the model and its rig, and then you have to take that model into something else to add the animations. We are looking at Make Human as a possible additional way to bring in a character. I actually think our characters that we create in the new character creator are better than the ones in Make Human, up to a point. I do think Make Human has some really cool tricks up its sleeve, like being able to configure the faces and the body shapes. But what you find is you can do like a perfectly excellent looking naked Make Human character. It's when you try and find clothes for them, that's where it really falls apart. And suddenly the characters don't quite look as convincing as if an artist created one from scratch. So there are going to be pitfalls in actually using these third-party character creator tools, and there are a few really nice ones out there. So we have yet to decide what kind of support we're going to offer these proprietary formats, including Make Human. scrolly. Let's find a question. Here's one from Martin Exman. Will we have a voice chat with multiplayer in Max? Photon seems to support it. Again, refer back to my previous multiplayer question. Think it makes sense, voice chat? Yes, sure. I do know for a fact Photon does support it. So the technology's there. It's just a question of, how much time is that really going to suck up? The UI's looking great. Thank you very much. We aim to please. Here, is this a question? No, that's not a question. That's just a nice big sentence. Here's a question mark. This is from Bleeding Me Dry Entertainment. Tell us more about the AI. Will we be able to see better interaction between player and non-player characters? I'm going to focus initially. Now, I have said in the past, I'm not going to add lots of new Lua scripts and Lua commands. I'm just going to basically give you what you got before, but it sort of works correct. I do want to look at pathfinding, and as I said, arbitrarily detecting surfaces on which characters can walk. I think that is important, just to make that whole process easier to use. But I've not really thought too much about the nuances of AI. Of course, it all comes from scripts. And I dare say, as I add those game logics I was referring to, we will need those AI elements, like a character who will try and sell you an object or a weapon or give you a clue. At the moment you can do that, but the character will just stand there and give you like one sentence. You'd probably want more than one sentence if you're talking to an RPG character. Things like that. Whether you classify that as AI or whether you're really referring to the shooter game style where the AI can hide behind rocks really well so you can't shoot him, that's as much to do with the animations available to the character. So yeah, maybe he can sort of run and duck whilst being fired at, that sort of thing. So it's really all about what do we need to do. Certainly the shooter showcase that we're doing is a zombie, so he won't be trying to duck and dive. He'll just try and slowly march towards you and bite your head off. But we'll see. We'll see what happens as we start working on the gameplay and those logic mechanics. I think AI will sort of emerge from that work. Looking at another question, Zorgo33. An approximate day of the release, question mark. There isn't even an approximate day of the release. Instead of just picking some arbitrary date in the future and saying we'll aim for that, you inevitably have to start making shortcuts to make sure you hit that date. Wouldn't it be better instead that you look at the software and say, we'll work on this until it's right, then we move on. We work on this until it's right, then we move on. So there isn't any general date yet. There is going to be discussions about that, about scheduling and sort of approximate dates, but we do want to get a handle on exactly how sweeping our changes are going to be on Max before we get a handle on exactly, or rather, roughly when that date's going to be. So basically watch this space. Here's a question. Do you guys need any support for Lua scripts, for interaction entities and such? Not at the moment. Not at the moment. I do think once the beta gets further along, once you start getting dev builds where you are literally creating games, you will inevitably start creating your own scripts. If some of those scripts are really cool and you are really generous, we may want to include them in the final release. That'd be awesome. But I would rather it come from your own passion and say, well, I was creating the script anyway for what I was doing, and you can have it and use it in the software if you want, because it will benefit everyone who uses Max. That would be supremely generous. But I would think that would just come from your own work with the later versions of the build. So I've got one more question, because I'm just checking out the time. You really don't want to go over the 30-minute mark. This is also from D32 Productions. Will we have a mission objective system, also with gamepad support, to work out like the Xbox One controller and PS4 controllers? We do have controller support, some controller support for Xbox, and some compatibility controller support as well. Mission objective system. I think if we were doing RPG logic, RPG requires a certain amount of quest-style logic implemented. So there will be that kind of thing where you set some objectives and then the player can complete those objectives in a non-linear fashion. And then once all the objectives are complete, a new challenge is unlocked, which then leads you on and so forth. And we'll also figure out how do we do that without extreme scripting know-how. How can we do it visually and easily so anyone can create such a system? So I think that will come out of the work when we start doing the mechanics for the quest-style games. So that's it for answers from me. You can find out all the other answers to the questions I have missed today, as I say, in the Game Guru forums under the live broadcast 19, together with this recording. So thanks for everyone who attended. As always, I will be here again next Wednesday at 4 p.m. GMT. And of course, if you can make it, please join me and we'll talk a little bit more about the latest, greatest developments with GameGuru MAX. So until then, next time, bye-bye and have a nice day.